Do you want to create quick and easy layered florals? In this video, I show you how. Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. In my last video, I shared how to add ink blending to die cut florals. Well, today I wanted to show you how quick and easy it is to use gradient cardstock. So let's get started. This is the Crafter Flower Carolina Allspice Layering Die Set. It's such a pretty set. I really love the shape of the flower. And then you've also got two leaves there as well. So on the back of the packaging, as it usually does, it shows how you can layer all of the pieces up. I have cut all of the pieces from Gradient Cardstock. So the first set is Cherry Blossom, and I've used all of the colours from that. And then I used the darkest shade from the Rose Petal set, and then I used Green Meadows for the leaves. So I've cut, like I said, cut all of the pieces out using the kind of reference on the back of the packaging to which layers would be the lightest shade and which layers would be the darkest shade. You can definitely switch things up and create them in lots of different ways, but because I'm going for kind of a quick and easy creating type thing here, I wanted to go with what was on the back of the packaging, and it turns out really pretty using that guide. So what I'm going to do is I'm adding some 2-in-1 precision glue pen onto the back of the pieces here, and I'm just layering them on top of each other. I am using some tweezers so that I can hover the pieces over each other before I press down, and that just makes sure that I'm getting it in the position that I want it to be in. This glue does have a little bit of wiggle time. If you leave it to dry on the back of the die cut, you can actually use it as repositionable glue as well, which is really quite helpful. But if you stick it down straight away, it does become a permanent glue. So once I'm happy with that, I can just press down and make sure that all of that is stuck down. I do apologise that the camera is shaking a little bit. Well, it's actually my desk, not the camera itself. I did struggle a little bit with my glue pen for some reason. I do actually end up having to switch it out for a different type of glue halfway through. It just didn't really seem to be working very well for some reason. I have used it since and it's absolutely fine, so it was just one of those unfortunate things where I'm filming and for some reason everything goes wrong. So I do apologise for that, but hopefully it's not too bad. So I'm just pressing down the next layer here, and like I said, that glue does give you a little bit of time that you can lift up pieces and then pop them down if they're not in the correct place. And then you've got these tiny little pieces that make it look like the petals are kind of folding up on itself. So this is the lightest shade here, and again I'm just using the back of the packaging so that I can see where they all need to be placed. So again, using the tweezers just to help me out with the placement of all of these lovely little petals. And I do really like using the Crafter Flower series with ink blending. When I first kind of was introduced to the Crafter Flower series, I always use Gradient Cardstock, and it's really helpful because the guessing work of which colours go with each other is all done for you. It's all in the cardstock packs. You don't need to mess around worrying if things are gonna match or anything like that. It's all done for you, which I personally really love. I just find it really helpful, and like I said, really quick and easy to put all of these flowers together. But I have gone on to doing more ink blending recently, and I do love both looks, so it's quite nice for me to go back to the Gradient Cardstock again. I'm just using the point on the tweezers here just to remove any of those kind of extra bit of cardstock that kind of sticks around after die cutting. It's quite helpful just to use that bit of the tweezers just to remove that. And then all my flower is now all layered up. I just think it looks really pretty, and you've got that added dimension just by having all of the layers of cardstock popped on top of each other. And then I'm just going to do the exact same thing for the leaves here. The leaves are just 3 layers, and they're again quite quick and easy just to put together. I'm just removing that excess bit of the cardstock fibres there. That tends to happen to me more when my die cutting plates are getting worn out. I don't feel like it cuts it quite as precisely, but you do tend to get those cardstock fibres however you do your die cutting, but they're quite easy to remove. So just finishing up with these leaves here. I think they're really pretty. I like the shape of them. And the great thing with all of the crafter flower sets, you can mix and match all of the different leaves and the flowers together as well, which is quite good. So just finishing off there with that centerpiece, the darkest layer of the leaf. I've then cut 2 tags using the Terrific Tags dies and Classic Crest 110 solar white cardstock. And on the first tag here, I'm just placing the flower down so that I can see where I want it to be placed before I stick it down. I want to have it overhanging the tag. Obviously this tag is quite a bit smaller than the flower itself. I personally quite like that look, but you could definitely create a bigger tag. There are bigger tags in that Terrific Tags set. So I'm just going to pop the leaves behind again so that I can see where I want them to be placed. Once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to add some glue tape onto the back of the leaves. I am just adding it into the sort of middle point of the leaves because I don't want adhesive all across the back because they are going to overlap that tag and I don't want the adhesive showing on the back of the tag. So I can just do the same thing there with that glue tape and this leaf. And just using the tweezers again just to help me out placing them down. I do then want the flower to be popped up, so I'm using some instant dimension foam tape, and I do keep picking up the flower as I'm adding the foam tape because again I don't want to have the foam tape visible from the back of the tag. So I can just cut some small pieces down and add those on the back of those petals. I can then just use the tweezers to help me remove the backing of that foam tape, and then I can place that down onto the tag. And I really love how these colours just really pop against the white tag. So I'm just using the tweezers there to kind of hover it over the tag, and then once I'm happy with the placement I can press that down. I have then stamped a sentiment. This is from the Strawberry stamp set, which is an older set, but I really love this sentiment that says happy birthday to you. I have stamped it onto some black cardstock with embossing ink and applied pure white crisp embossing powder, and then I've cut that down into a strip. I do want to add some dimension onto the back of the sentiment strip because I do want it to be slightly higher than the flower itself, but I didn't want it to be higher enough that I wanted to add some more foam tape on it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting thin strips of black cardstock so that I can layer those onto the back of the sentiment strip. I do want them to be thinner than the sentiment strip itself so that you don't actually see that it's dimensional. You just see that it's raised up against the flower, but you don't see that it's multiple layers thick, if that makes sense. So I'm just using some glue there just to stick all of these strips down behind the sentiment strip. And this one is just a little bit long, so I can cut that down at the top there. And then I'm going to add some more glue onto the back of the sentiment, and then I can stick that down. And I do end up sticking the sentiment down a little bit wonky. I don't realise at this point, but a little bit later on I do realise and I managed to correct it. So I've then taken that other tag that I cut and I'm adding some glue tape onto the back of it. So then I can back that against the back of the other tag. When you do die cutting, you do sometimes get some indentations from the cutting plates on the back of the die cuts. And so it's nice just to cover that over with the other tag. And it also just gives some stability to the tag as well, because I'm adding quite a lot of layers of cardstock on top. I want it to be nice and stable. I'm then just adding some twine through the top of the tag, and then I can tie that in a bow at the front. And I like to try and have one tail of the bow kind of facing upwards and one facing downwards. I don't seem to have much control over which side goes where, so I just create the bow and then figure that out afterwards. So sometimes if I'm kind of like recreating something, it doesn't always end up exactly the same, but that's okay. It's quite nice to have something slightly different. And then I can just cut those tails down with the scissors. And then to embellish the tag, I'm taking some cherry blossom enamel dots, and I'm using the lightest pink here, which is the same shade that I used on those petals that are kind of folded up on themselves. And I'm just placing two underneath that sentiment strip and one there at the top of that flower petal. And so that is the tag finished. I really like how it turned out. You can see here that I figured out that sentiment isn't quite straight, so I'm just trying to move that around. But I do like how this tag turned out. The colours, like I said, really pop against that white tag, and it's fairly dimensional, but it's not too bulky. But I know that not everyone loves creating standalone tags, so I do want to show you how I'm going to add it onto a card. I have the Crafty's Essential Scoring Board here, and what's great is it comes with a stylus tool and it fits in the top of the scoring board, which is great because then you're never going to lose it. And I've taken an A2 sized white card base, so this is a finished size of 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. I do end up cutting it down slightly, but at this point it is the same size. And I'm taking the Crafter's Essential bone folder and I'm just scoring some lines into the front of the card base here. I'm using the bone folder to start with, and then I do go in with the stylus tool afterwards. Either work perfectly fine. I do sometimes think that the stylus tool does give a slightly more crisp line, especially if you're doing scoring like something like this, but both work really well, so either or is really great to use. So I'm just kind of adding lines onto the front of the card base in kind of a random order, so some of them are really close together, some of them are more far apart. I just wanted a little bit of added interest onto the card base. It's really nice just to add like a subtle interest, and it's always difficult, unfortunately, to see in photos white on white embossing with the lines, but it is really pretty in real life, and like I said, it just adds a little bit of extra interest. But so that the lines show up a little bit more, I'm just going to add a little bit of ink blending onto the bottom of this card base. I do this quite often. I actually add scoring lines onto a lot of my card bases, but sometimes I just like to add ink blending as well. I went with the Pinkalicious Crisp Dye Ink. This is the same shade as one of the middle shades of the Gradient Cardstock pack. So they all match quite nicely, but it also would work really nicely with a completely different colour. So maybe yellow or something would work quite nicely as well. But I did like it kind of all matching. So I'm just using the large ink blending tool here, adding some of the ink onto that and then blending this upwards. I really love this large ink blending tool to kind of fade out to white. So I've added the most of the concentration of the colour at the bottom of the card and then fading up to white as I go up. And although again it's difficult to see here on camera, in real life it is showing up those scoring lines much better. I thought that I was going to add the tag into the middle of the card, and then I decided that actually I quite like it here in the bottom left hand corner. Because the leaf is overhanging the card base slightly, I am going to cut 1/4 of an inch off of the right hand side so that it can still fit in a standard sized envelope. I can then add some glue tape onto the back of the tag here, and then I can pop that down onto the card. I did think about adding it with foam tape, but because the tag is actually 2 layers high, and then you've got all of the layers from the cardstock flower and then also the foam tape underneath the flower as well, I thought that it was already quite dimensional. But you can see here how that pink ink just works really nicely against that pink flower, and in real life those scoring lines do show up quite nicely. So it's quite nice to have a set of the kind of tag, so one on the card and then one also as a standalone tag, which I might add onto a present. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hello there, crafty friend, Lydia here. Just popping in to say that you can get your daily dose of crafting tips, techniques and tutorials just like this by subscribing to the Altenew YouTube channel. All you need to do is click on that little bell up there and you will never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.